I will start with a short memory. I still remember the first time I met Noga. It was at the party in New Jersey more than 30 years ago. And we were standing around, and as scientists tend to do, we were trying to solve one of the world mysteries. Whether a slice of bread can be eaten under 10 seconds. Half an hour later, several of us were already discouraged, doubting that it is at all possible. And then a young gentleman I had never met before reached for his slice, balled it up in his hands, and swallowed it all, comfortably within 15 seconds. Noga has since continued to solve difficult problems with beautiful, elegant solutions by making connections that were invisible to others. Noga, I'm honored to be here to celebrate your birthday. So today I will speak about extremal problems for uniformly dense hypergraphs. This is a subject initiated by Hungarian mathematicians Paul Turan, Paul Erdős, and Vera Sors. So I will briefly say something about Turan-type problems. Then I will talk what I mean by uniformly dense hypergraphs. Then we will combine them, Turan-type problems for uniformly dense hypergraphs. And we mention some related results and problems. So Turan-type problems. So as many of you know, extremal number for a fixed graph f and integer n, extremal number x and f is the maximum number of edges of a graph with n vertices which doesn't contain any copy of f. And one can define Turan density as a limit of these extremal numbers divided by n choose 2, so densities. One can show that this limit always exists, and this is called the Turan density of a graph f. The similar definition can be made for the families of graphs. In that case, the extremal number, we forbid any graph from script f. So it's defined analogously. And it follows by theorems of Mantel, Turan, Erdős, and Stone that this set of, or the Turan density is described as follows, where T is the minimum chromatic number of a graph in script F. So I just look for the graph that has the minimum chromatic number, and that decides the Turan density. So the set of all Turan densities is this set. I will mention briefly some facts about multigraphs. It's not so well studied area. There are some problems which seems to be interesting or hard. So I don't know too much, so I won't speak about it too long. So Q multigraph is a multigraph without loops with edges of multiplicity at most Q. And the density of a multigraph is defined analogously. So if we see 3 edges, we count 3 for that place. So that means that the densities can be anything between 0 and Q. And one can define all these parameters I talked about accordingly. And then one can ask, what is the set of the Turan densities for Q multigraphs? And quite surprisingly, already for Q equal to 2, this question appears to be much harder, and no explicit description, even of the set by 2, is known. So it has been proved by Erdős, Brown, and Simonovic in 1985, and then again by Sidorenko, who gave a nice streamlined proof in 1993 that set by 2 is well ordered. For Q equal to 3, I just was looking at it relatively recently with a student and visitor Paul Horn, and we tried to decide how it is, and we could only show that within the interval 0, 2, the set pi 3 is also well-ordered and has type omega to the omega, so it's much richer than for, say, for graphs. But for example, we know nothing about the structure of this pi 3 within the interval 2 and 3. In particular, it would be interesting to decide whether there exists a sequence of multigraphs or multigraph families, maybe one should say, which converges from upwards to 2. So that means whether the set, that would mean that pi 3 is not well ordered and 2 is the reason for that already. But we were not smart enough to decide it. For q bigger or equal than 4, one can show that the set is not well ordered, so it has some weird structure. So not only we cannot describe the actual numbers, but we cannot even understand the order type. And it was proved by Sidorenko and me, and we gave more examples in the recent paper. So that's all I know. So let's move to hypergraphs. Hypergraph, what is I will talk just about 3 uniform hypergraphs today. So what is a hypergraph? It has a vertex set. It has some edges. Here they are. The edges have cardinality 3. Here is the hypergraph. And again, we can define the extremal number in the same way. So extremal number is the maximum number of edges of a 3 uniform hypergraph that doesn't contain a fixed hypergraph. So once more, if I have a fixed hypergraph, an integer n, I can define again this x of n f. And again, we can consider the limit, which will be the Turan density. We can again ask about the Turan densities. And it was proved by Erdős in 1964 that pi of f is 0 if and only if the 3 uniform hypergraph is 3-partite. That means its vertex can be decomposed into 3 sets, and edges are of the form that take one vertex from x, one vertex from y, and one vertex from z. Actually, Paul Erdős once told me that he proved this paper once he went on boat from Italy to Israel. So, at least that is what I remember. Only few new particle results are known. Sometimes multigraphs results can be helpful tools. So for example, it's known that Turan density of Fano plane is 3/4. That was proved by Dekan and Füredi. And little later, Füredi and Simonovic and Kivas and Sudakov found the precise result. So found not only Turan density, but precise result for every n. So describes the extremal family. So once more, Turan result for hypergraphs, I will talk. So for graph, it looks this way. For 3 graphs, we know that the first gap, so for graphs, it follows, we look on what is the set, that whenever the density is at least 0, strictly bigger than 0, then it is at least 1/2. So if it is bigger than 0, it must be 1/2. It follows from the result of Erdős for 3 graphs, if it is bigger than 0, it must be at least 2 nines. And Bolobas showed in 1974 that indeed 2 nines is a Turan density. He gave 2 graphs, family of 2 graphs that proves it, and then a little later, or 9 years later, Franklin and Füredi just found 3 graph that has Turan density 2 nines. There is a beautiful and most likely very hard question due to Paul Erdős, who asked, what happens at 2 nines? Is there a similar gap after 0? So from 0 it jumps to 2 nines. There is no density between 0 and 2 nines. What happens after 2 nines? Is there a beta bigger than 0, bigger than 2 nines, so that the interval 2 nines and beta doesn't contain any Turan density? So is it true or not? It seems to be a very striking problem. Paul Erdős asked, at that time it was believed that the set must be also well ordered, and he we tried to prove it with Peter Frankl. Then after it was too hard to prove it, we tried to disprove it, and we were more successful with that. So it's not well ordered. That was before we showed things with Sidorenko, and some of the stuff with Peter was used in Sidorenko's proof as well. Anyway, on the other hand, Barber and Talbot showed a short interval in which the set by 3 is well ordered. So they have a proof based on the computer, so the flat algebra, and they claim this result. Anyway, Pikurko's very nice result showed that the set by 3 has size continuum, so which is much stronger result than ours. With Frankl, interestingly, in order to produce the set of size continuum, he uses the existence of sequences that converge downward. So he uses the result with Frankl. He proves some other nice results. I am not going to talk about them. So this is the area. And basically, that's what it is known. More is known, but I will not talk about it. So what are the prominent problems in the area? So very prominent problem is what is the Turan number of K4, or what is the Turan number of K4 minus NH? So let's start with K4 minus NH. So what it is? So it's 4 vertices and 3 edges. Here it is. And what is known? It's known by Frankl and Firedi, and on the other hand, Barber and Talbot gave the bounds. So Frankl and Firedi have the construction lower bound, Talbot has the upper bound, so they are pretty close, but it's not yet decided. So this is the state of art. It would be very interesting to have some real understanding describing how these Turan numbers are behaving, why, what is the structure. But similarly for K4, this is known, the lower bound old result of Turan, Rasborov again by Fleck algebra, pretty close. I think again in third digit, it's just different. Anyway, so these are known results about this basic interesting graph. And now I will get to the main topic of this talk, namely about uniformly dense hypergraphs. So since Turan problems for hypergraphs are hard, we restrict to class of uniformly dense hypergraphs. I didn't say what it is, and I will not tell you on this slide. So it's a class of hypergraphs, we can define these extremal numbers in a similar way as we did before. Only the one restriction is that the hypergraph H will not be arbitrary hypergraph on n vertices, but we will put some extra condition on that hypergraph. So we will like only certain H, hypergraph H, and among them we want to take the one which has the maximum number of edges and which is F-free. Of course, because, so it's an asymptotic statement, it has to be defined appropriately. So we will consider various concepts of this uniform denseness. And depending on that, we will obtain different results. So this is what I will talk about. So this is what I said. Right, so this last but one click, just this inequality, means that because I restrict myself to a special class of hypergraphs, the corresponding Turan number will be always more or equal than the general Turan number, because here I am allowed to take maximum over all, here I am allowed only to take maximum over a certain class. And we shall consider various concepts of uniform denseness. So, what is the weak concept? The weak concept of three uniform hypergraph is weakly epsilon p dense if for any three disjoint sets x, y, z, if I look on the sets which take one vertex, or edges which take one vertex from X, one vertex from Y, and one vertex from Z, their number is at least p% of all triplets, plus some or minus some error. So we insist that for every three subsets, we see the p proportion of all possible edges, and we subtract something for the error. So, of course, this makes sense only, it says something only if the sets are sufficiently large, because if they are smaller than epsilon, then this segment is void. So this will be the concept of weak epsilon p denseness. Maybe there is a better word for it, but yeah, I didn't find it. So what we will be considering, I talked about it already, we will be interested in largest density p, such that for every epsilon, there exists epsilon weakly p-dense hypergraph, so it's a hypergraph in our family that contains no copy of F. And this is the formal definition of what it means, what this pi will be. And why we have these funny three dots, these three dots in our mind represented three sets X, Y, Z. Well, you can represent them in various ways, but since we will be interested in other concept of denseness, then this suggested something. So I will ask you for patience to tolerate this notation. So I would like to mention that whatever I will be talking about is also true under the following somewhat weaker definitions, namely, and somewhat maybe more natural definition, that instead of three sets, X, Y, Z, I will just consider one set U, and I will want that on that set U, I will see a p% of the edges. However, because I want to compare this V concept with other concepts that will follow, I will consider three-set version. So that's the only reason. But all the results should be true, or are true, for this weaker version. So what are the examples of weakly dense hypergraphs? So for example, if I take no edges, right, it's not too dense, but it's zero dense, right? So P is zero. Or if I take all edges, then it's one dense. But let's take something more interesting. That the following hypergraph is well known. It was used by Erdős and Heine long ago. And it's a hypergraph arising from a tournament, namely random tournament. So I take a complete graph and randomly orient the edges. And we see that the oriented triangles appear with probability 1/4. So, and I will consider hypergraph made by these triangles which are oriented. And so this is what I said, and one can show that such a hypergraph is weakly epsilon 1/4 dense, if any sufficiently large. So this hypergraph has also another property. It doesn't contain K4 minus NH. This is also well known. So let's try to squeeze there K4 minus NH. So this way we can put two edges, the only way how we can put two edges. If we try to put there the third edge, no matter how we orient this blue pair, we will run into a problem, and there is no three edge there. So meaning that on every 4-element set, we can see at most two edges. There is no K4 3 minus NH. So combining these two facts, HT is weakly epsilon 1/4 dense, and HT contains no K4 3 minus NH, we infer that the lower bound for this weak density for K4 3 minus NH is at least 1/4. And indeed, it was conjectured by Erdős and Sós in 1982 that this is true. Recently, a computer-aided proof was obtained by Glebov, Kral, and Volats. So this is now a theorem. But I will talk about it a little bit more later. So this was about K for 3 minus an edge. So next natural choice is how is it for K4. So for K for 3 minus an edge, we took the tournament. What we will take for K4? So consider a set of n vertices, 1 through n, and for every vertex I, consider a partition of the set I plus 1 through n, random partition, into red and blue, and then take all the triplets of type I, R, B. So vertex I and 2 follow vertices which are behind it, 1 red, 1 blue. And then let's consider this partition EI to be randomly chosen independently of each other. And this way we get 3 uniform hypergraphs which satisfy. For that we didn't need that it is random, but so far, sorry, but we will use it. Right, so this bipartite graph has right link of every vertex is bipartite. By right link I mean the bipartite graph, the graph which is formed by pairs which together with that vertex I form a triplet, and right link are those vertices who are on the right of that. So it has right link to be a bipartite graph. And that means that no I can be the first vertex of K4, because K4 has the first vertex of the K4 would see a triangle and not a bipartite graph. So it's K4 free. And one can show that this graph, if we take this partition randomly, independently of each other, is epsilon 1/2 depth. Again, putting these two things together yields the lower bound for this uniform weak density for K4 to be at least 1/2. So now I will mention a couple of new results and open problems. We have more problems than the results, but somehow we will talk about. So we'll see. These all results are together with Christian Reyer and Matthias Scharf, both in Hamburg. So the first thing, the result we had was another proof of the fact that K43 minus NH is 1/4. And that proof is not using flat algebra, no computer aided, but it uses hypergraph regularity lemma. And actually we get one little benefit, I don't know whether it's interesting or not, namely we get that K43 minus NH with the property that its that its apex, by that I mean the vertex which is contained in 3 edges, is either first or last in natural order, if I consider H to be. So I have a hypergraph H which has density 1/4 plus little bit on integers 1 through n, and I can find the K43 minus NH, which has first vertex in 3 edges or last vertex in 3 edges. Another result which we got is that we characterized those 3 uniform hypergraphs which have the density 0. So it's a result analogous to a result of Erdős of 1964. Here it's quite harder, at least it seemed to our proof. And these hypergraphs are precisely those that their vertex can be linearly ordered, and their pairs can be colored by red, blue, and green in such a way that whenever I see U, V, W in that order, I will be taking as edges only those triplets that have certain color pattern, certain fixed color pattern. So this is an edge, but this won't be an edge. So these are the hypergraphs. Subgraphs of that are hypergraphs which have the precisely density equal to 0. Similarly, as in the case of R' result, it follows that whenever we have a hypergraph density bigger than 0, then in here it must have the Turan density at least 1 over 27. Remark on proofs. So proofs are based on the regularity method for hypergraphs. For this result, we only use the following, we rely on the following graph theoretical result. So the proof is that one regularizes, then does something, and then transfers it to a graph theoretic result, which is maybe, so I will state it. What it says that if I have a graph, normal graph with m vertices, it's n-partite, so its vertices are divided into m parts, and each of these vertex classes has size L, and we have the following condition. The condition is a little bit weird, but this is precisely what we get. If we have degree of vertex v of vi to vj is a degree of vertex vi into set vj, and if this degree is squared and summation over all vi is at least 1/4 plus epsilon times L cubed, and m is sufficiently large, then G contains a triangle. So if, say, the corresponding bipartite graph would be complete, we would see the sum would be equal to L cubed, right? Because V to Vj would have size L, I would square it, it would be L squared. I would sum it up over Vi, it also has size L, it would be V L cubed. But I see 1/4 plus epsilon of it for every pair. And now, if m is very large, with respect to 1 over epsilon, it seems that L is irrelevant, then this graph contains a triangle. This is the statement. And although it's a Turan type statement, maybe somewhat interesting is, I don't know, is that it is proved by Ramsey's theorem. So how it is proved, maybe, should I show it or not? No, 2 slides. So it's then how the lemma is used before I show the proof. Lemma yields a triangle interlink of a suitably chosen vertex. I will not, which will be the apex of A for 3 minus n. So this is the lemma. And so we have m much larger than 1 over epsilon. And here I will try to describe the proof. So between 1 over epsilon and m, we will put some constant delta, 1 over delta, which satisfies this hierarchy. And now I have I and j less than m, and we fix and delta, we may think of delta as a reciprocal to an integer. So delta 2, delta 3, delta, I have same intervals to 1, it's not of course important. And I will, for every I and j, define the maximum gamma ij such that more than delta L vertices ui in Vi have the degree bigger than gamma ij to L. So this is the maximum multiple of delta, gamma ij, with the property that I see still many vertices with degree at least as big as gamma ij times L. So this is the definition. Okay, so let's capital gamma j be a set of all those vertices. So if this is the set of all those vertices, then we have one thing, that there are less than delta L vertices that have, in gamma ij, that have more degree bigger than gamma ij plus delta times L. So I don't have many vertices, so I have less than delta L vertices in Vi. This gamma ij should be Vi, sorry. That have more than gamma ij plus delta vertices. So I don't have many vertices of high degree. So these are the orange vertices. of higher than gamma ij plus delta, because gamma ij was the largest. Now, for every pair ij, I have gamma ij, and I apply the Ramsey theorem with 1 over delta plus 1 colors. And I can find, because m was much larger, I can find still R, which is 1 plus 1 over delta, sets. I can consider that these are the sets from 1 to R, where all pairs are monochromatic. That means that all gamma ij are identical and say they are equal to gamma. So what it means in particular, that if I look on the set V1 and look on set gamma 1, 2, gamma 1, 3, and gamma 1 R, because these sets are of size bigger than delta, and I have more than 1 over delta of them, 2 of them intersect. So here I have a situation. Here I have a vertex. So I have a vertex V1, which is in V1, and which has more than gamma L vertices in V2 and more than gamma L neighbors in V3. And then we are trying to calculate what is the density between V2 and V3. So if I have and I assume that I don't see any triangle by contradiction. So if I take a vertex in V2 in the green area, then because I don't have any triangle, it must have the degree less than 1 minus gamma times L. On the other hand, if I take a vertex in the remaining complement of the green area, it will typically have the degree less than or equal to gamma plus delta times L, because gamma was the largest that I saw more than delta L. And then there are some delta L troublemakers where I have no control. So what it means for the sum, it means that these vertices in the green area will add me to the sum gamma times 1 minus gamma squared. In the complement, they will add 1 minus gamma times gamma plus delta squared at most, and then plus these troublemakers where I don't have any control. But now, due to the fact that delta is much smaller than epsilon, simple calculation gives that this is more than 1/4 plus epsilon, which is a contradiction with the fact that I had more than 1/4 plus epsilon edges. So this way we find the triangle there. Sorry, no proofs anymore. So these are the two facts. So what is the smallest possible non-zero value for this Turan density, if it exists? I'm sure it exists. So this is not the last version, as Asaf knows. Well, we didn't succeed. Is there a 3 uniform hypergraph F with the precisely density of 1/27? So this would be a result analogous to Frankel and Firetti or Bolobashi. So whether this is indeed a Turan density. How many copies of K? Another question would be how many copies of K43 minus NH must appear in H if I have a epsilon p dense hypergraph with density p bigger than 1/4. This is certainly an extremely hard problem already for graphs. This was a hard problem investigated by Lovas and Simonovic and Razborov, and recently solved, or in general by Rayer. What is the Turan density of Kt for t bigger or equal than 4? And I just wanted to say that generalization of that construction, where we split the right neighborhood into red and blue, if we split it into t minus 2 parts, would give such a lower bound. So is that the right order of magnitude? In particular, for t equal to 4, is this, and that's still open. However, something can be shown towards the direction, and in a couple of next minutes I will talk about that. So one can strengthen the assumption of this weak denseness. And so weak density was the density with respect to 3 sets. Now consider a density with respect to a graph and set, which will be a stronger concept. So consider a subset of vertex set and a graph, so blue set and green graph. And whenever I see such a configuration, I see a vertex and from my set and pair from the graph, I will be asking how frequently this is being matched by a hyperedge of the hypergraph. So I am interested in such a situation. So we are counting with multiplicity number of hyperedges of the hypergraph supported by vertices from X and pairs from P. And if this happens whenever I have X and whenever I have P, if this always happens at P% of the possible pairs, then we will call it that the hypergraph is one edge dense. Why one edge? Because I have one edge on 3 vertices, so I have no better name for it. So for example, here I have 3 vertices, 5 edges, 15 situations. We did match it 4 times, so the density would be 415, so I'm interested. So whenever I see such a thing, I want to match it in P%. So let me just remark that this concept of denseness is stronger than the weak denseness, and how one can see it, that one can take a graph which is just a Cartesian product of y and z. So having defined this, we can define the two-round density for that concept. And with that concept of two-round density, one can then prove that the two-round density of K4 is 1/2. The lower bound follows from the same random pair construction I was discussing earlier. Same thing, a little bit. One needs to verify something. And proof of the upper bound relies again on regularity for hypergraphs, Ramsey-type arguments. So then we consider one more strengthening. If we have one edge dense, we could have 2 edge dense. So consider 2 graphs, and whenever I see one green, one blue, and whenever I see a 2-pass with one green edge, one blue edge, I will be asking how frequently is this situation matched by a hyperedge. And so I have a set of these 2 paths, and this E of PQ will be the number of those which are matching these 2 paths. So again, if I am given such a thing, so I am interested when it is being matched. And I want to be matched always in P%, and then it's P2 edge dense. So again, this concept is stronger than the previous one. One can easily observe it. And in this case, and in fact it's a lot stronger, because one can show the two-round density of a complete graph on 2 to the t vertices is at most t minus 2 divided by t minus 1. And we can find the lower bound for t equal to 2, 3, and 4. But there are some gaps, as you will see. So what it means, that if I have this concept of denseness, then K4 I see already at any positive density, but not K5. K5 has density at least 1/3, but K6 through K8 has density 1/2. K5 we know just it's between 1/3 and 1/2. K9 and K10 we don't know, but from K11 to K16 we know it's 2/3. This K11 follows from the result of Graham and Chung, who considered colorings of a graph which have either multicolored or monochromatic sample. And using that, we get this bound. And similarly, we have some other colorings using some simpler observations. And due to this fact, because we can't produce, we could consider also concept for quasi-randomness, but here we cannot show the quasi-random lower bounds. So due to that, I didn't talk about quasi-random concepts, but about the concepts which are dense. So that, because sometimes it's denser, this lower bound. Anyway, so this is the remark. So we know such a hierarchy. One could, of course, ask, what about 3 edge dents? If you had 2 edge dents, 1 edge dent, so what about 3 edge dents? In 3 edge dents, everybody has density 0, because that's already a strong quasi-randomness. We consider some extensions for k-uniform hypergraphs, but I don't think I should talk about this today. So I will quit, and I will wish Noga all of that, and we don't wish only happy birthday, but happy many years to come. So, thank you. Thank you.
Another great talk. Any questions? Ready?
So you were saying something, but I'm not sure. Instead of this lower depth, I assume for the usual quasi-random problem, between any 3 sets having a right and outbound, goes up and lower bound. Does the problem change? You don't know.
I only know that for 1/4, that same proof I talked about will go through with this D-curve 1-set version. Right? But that's it. That's not more.
There is no example of problems where the lower density quasi-random is different.
No, but right, so no. So all what I meant is that if I take 1-set version for this and do the proof for that, it works, kind of. Or actually, it's proved that way. But I used 3-set version because I wanted to compare it with other concepts.
Why are you assuming that one-sided inequality? This is
One-sided. Why is it considered one-sided inequality? Just because of this last concept. I'm sorry, I have long back, so I now got it right. What is the question? So just because of this last concept, the lower bounds we have here to obtain these inequalities, we don't produce the genuinely quasi-random hypergraphs which have the same density on every blue-green pair. But we do those which have density at least. So for that concept, we can show the lower bounds only because of for the denseness. Do I make sense? For everything else, it's the same. But I did the quasi-random, and so the lower bounds are quasi-random. So, but I didn't want to jump from one concept to another. I wanted to have one thing graphics also. So this is for the lower bound in here.
Is the density for the force free example for this case the same as the Turan example?
Say that, so I don't hear. So for 4-3.
For the famous force free case, if you make this further restrictions, you describe the construction, but I didn't. I misnoticed what is the density of this.
For 4-3, it's 1/4 for the big concept.
Okay.
That's it.
1/2 is not 5.
Pardon me?
Oh, okay.
1/2 is not 5 times.
It does. Okay. I'm sorry, I don't hear well. Yes. Okay.
There was this result of Oleg from Kirkwood that you said
Uh-huh.
the size of the densities
Right.
are the size of the continuum.
Mm-hmm.
You're permitting two different families there, right? Not just the
Right. Yeah. Otherwise, yeah, you cannot continue. Right. Precisely. Right. Mhm. Yes.
You mentioned the 2010 result by Bauer and colleagues that the density within a particular space singular interval is well ordered. Is it known to be infinite? Is it known to be non-infinite?
Actually, I have to be honest, I haven't read their paper. So I looked in the abstract, and this is precisely what they say. I thought it may be empty in that interval, but they claim to be only well-ordered. So of course, it must be somewhere empty if it is well-ordered, right? But I don't know, yeah, I don't know, I didn't study it, right? So the interval is pretty short. Right? Well-ordered, I don't know what order type. But this is what their abstract says, this is what their theorem says. The paper is not too long, so if I would be more diligent, I would tell you better.
Any more questions? Okay, so we have 8 minutes.
Doesn't go too long? Okay, how long did it go? Did that go too long? Yeah, okay. Oh yeah, right.
זה מעניין אותי.